The desert wind carried the sound of hooves and betrayal. It was the kind of day when dust clung to tears and silence weighed heavier than bullets. The sun sat high and merciless above the plains, burning everything beneath it, including the heart of a woman named Evelyn Ward, 30 years old, and newly sold like a piece of broken furniture. Her husband, Miles Ward, had once promised her a quiet life on the edge of the New Mexico frontier, a small ranch, a few cows, and a future that stretched as far as the horizon. But promises in the West were like mirages, beautiful from afar, hollow up close. For years they had tried for children. Every month ended the same, with Miles's disappointed sighs and Evelyn's quiet shame. Whispers traveled through the town faster than the prairie wind. "She's barren," they said. "That poor man's cursed with an empty cradle." Miles had started drinking more, gambling more. And one night, when the cards turned against him, he wagered the only thing left that anyone would take his wife. Evelyn didn't believe it at first when she heard her name pass his lips in that smoky saloon. The men around the table laughed, thinking it a cruel joke. But when a tall, silent Apache warrior placed his knife on the table as his wager, the laughter died. The warrior's eyes didn't blink. He wasn't drunk, and he wasn't joking. The dealer flipped the cards. Miles lost by sunrise. Evelyn was tied to the back of a horse, her wrists raw from rope, her lips cracked from disbelief. She didn't scream, she didn't have the strength left to. The Apache warrior rode ahead of her, his long black hair swaying in the wind, his skin marked with the symbols of his people. He said nothing. He didn't need to. For hours, the desert stretched endlessly around them, swallowing her tears. When they reached a narrow canyon surrounded by red cliffs, he stopped and dismounted. Evelyn stared at him, trembling. "You bought me," she said bitterly, her voice barely a whisper. "Why? I'm nothing. I can't even give a man a child." The warrior turned, his face carved from stone but his eyes alive with something she couldn't name. He stepped closer, studying her as if reading her soul. "My name is Tarak," he said finally, his voice deep and calm. "And I did not buy you. I freed you." Evelyn blinked, confusion crossing her dusty face. "Freed me? From what?" "From a man who sold what he did not own," Tarak replied. "The Great Spirit does not trade souls." She laughed bitterly. "And what do you want from me then? I've nothing left. No land, no husband, no womb that works." Tarak's eyes didn't flinch. He placed his hand over his heart, then over her stomach. "The earth gives life when the rain returns," he said softly. "By 9 moons you will bear our child." Evelyn staggered back as though struck. "You're mad," she hissed. "You don't know what you're saying." He didn't argue. Instead, he walked to a nearby stream and filled a clay cup, offering it to her. "Drink," he said. "The dessert tests those it wishes to keep." She didn't take it. Her mind raced between anger, disbelief, and a strange, growing fear. Who was this man who spoke with the certainty of prophecy? Why did his words shake her more than Miles's cruelty ever had? That night, under a sky scattered with stars, Tarak built a small fire. He spoke little, but his presence filled the canyon like thunder before a storm. Evelyn sat across from him, arms wrapped around her knees, trying to make sense of her fate. Miles was gone. Her past was gone. But the words Tarak spoke, "by 9 moons," echoed in her chest like a haunting drumbeat. When she finally drifted to sleep, she dreamed of rain falling on cracked earth, of seeds sprouting where there had only been dust and far away. In the flickering light of the dying fire, Tarak watched her with eyes that saw beyond the flesh, into the spirit where something was already stirring, something that neither of them could yet understand. Evelyn woke to the sound of water dripping from the canyon walls. The night chill still clung to her skin, but the first rays of dawn painted the cliffs in deep gold and rust. For a moment, she forgot where she was, until she saw Tarak crouched by the fire, grinding herbs with slow, rhythmic hands. He didn't look at her when he spoke. "You slept long. The body remembers rest when the spirit is broken." Evelyn sat up, her throat dry. "You talk as if you know me," she said bitterly. "You don't even know my name." Tarak's eyes lifted. "I do," he replied. "Evelyn Ward, the woman the town calls Barren." She froze. "How do you?" He placed the bowl of herbs aside and rose to his full height, the morning light tracing the muscles across his chest. "The wind tells stories," he said simply. "It carried yours." Evelyn turned away, ashamed, though she didn't know why. "You should have left me there," she muttered. "Let him sell me to whoever would take me. At least I'd know what to expect." Tarak stepped closer, his shadow falling across her. "A man who sells his wife for debt sells his own spirit first," he said. "But the Great Spirit has other plans for you." Evelyn laughed dryly. "The Great Spirit? Don't talk to me about plans. I've prayed for years for one thing, a child. And every month my prayers went unanswered." He studied her for a long moment, his gaze unreadable. "The earth listens," he said finally, "but it gives life only when the seed is placed in the right soil." She frowned, not understanding. Tarak turned, motioning for her to follow. Beyond the canyon was a stretch of desert that shimmered in the morning heat. He led her to a patch of cracked, dry ground where a single green shoot pushed through the dust. "This land was dead 2 seasons ago," Tarak said. "We burned sage, we waited, we believed. The rain returned." He knelt and touched the tender shoot. "Now life grows again." Evelyn stared at the fragile stem. It was so small, so defiant in a place of death. "You think I'm like this?" she asked softly. He met her eyes. "You are the earth after drought. Your spirit must drink before your body can bloom." His words hit her deeper than she expected. She wanted to scoff, to call him foolish, but instead she felt a crack forming inside her, the kind that let light through. For the next days she stayed with him in the canyon. Tarak showed her how to find water hidden beneath stones, how to listen to the wind's direction, how to read the tracks of coyotes and deer. He spoke little, but every word carried purpose. Evelyn found herself watching him, how his hands moved, how he treated every living thing with respect out at night they shared food by the fire. Tarak told her about his people, how they believed everything had a soul, the rivers, the trees, even pain. "Pain is not your enemy," he said one night as flames flickered in his eyes. "It is the teacher that remains when hope leaves." Evelyn looked down at her hands. "Then I must be your best student," she whispered. He smiled faintly. "Perhaps you have learned enough." That night she dreamed again the same vision as before. Rain fell over the desert, soaking the sand until green life burst forth. But this time she stood in the rain, her hands on her stomach, and the wind whispered a name she couldn't yet hear. When she woke, Tarak was standing at the mouth of the canyon, watching the horizon. The sun was still hidden, but the air was heavy. The smell of rain was near. "Storm comes," he said. Evelyn joined him, her heart strangely calm. "Does it scare you?" she asked. Tarak turned to her. "The storm brings what the desert needs," he said softly. "And you, Evelyn Ward, are standing at the edge of yours." Before she could speak, thunder rolled across the sky, low, distant, but sure. The first drops of rain began to fall, darkening the sand at her feet, and though she didn't know why, tears mixed with the rain on her cheeks, because for the first time in years, Evelyn didn't feel barren, she felt alive. The rain came harder than Evelyn had ever seen in her life. It began as a whisper, then turned into a roar that shook the canyon walls. Tarak didn't move from where he stood, his bare chest glistening beneath the falling water. He tilted his head toward the sky, arms open wide, as if greeting an old friend. Evelyn stood a few feet behind him, soaked and trembling, but she couldn't look away. Something about the way Tarak faced the storm made him seem untouchable, like a man who'd learned to speak with the sky itself. When the wind howled, he turned to her. "Do not fear it," he said. "This is the voice of renewal." Evelyn's voice broke. "Renewal? It feels like the world's breaking apart." Tarak walked toward her slowly, the rain streaking down his face. "Sometimes the earth must break," he said softly, "before it can grow again." For a moment, she felt his nearness, his warmth, despite the cold, and something inside her shifted. She wasn't sure if it was fear or longing. When the rain finally slowed, the canyon was a river of mud and life. Streams ran where dust had ruled for years. Evelyn's dress clung to her, heavy with water, but her heart felt lighter than it had in years. They spent the next 2 days sheltering in a small cave carved into the rock wall. Tarak built a fire and dried their clothes, the flickering light casting gold over his skin. He said little, but his presence filled the small space like the heartbeat of the earth itself. Evelyn found herself watching him again, the way his hands moved with patience, the way his eyes seemed to hold centuries of understanding. "Why did you say those words to me?" she asked one evening as the rain faded into drizzle. "That I'd bear your child in 9 moons. You don't even know me." Tarak stirred the fire with a stick. "I did not speak them from desire," he said. "I spoke what I saw." "What you saw?" She echoed. He looked up, his dark eyes reflecting the flames. "Before I found you, I dreamt of a woman standing in a storm. Her hands were empty, but the rain turned to life where she walked. When I saw you in that saloon, eyes full of hurt, soul ready to die, I knew you were the one from the vision." Evelyn's breath caught. "You think I'm some prophecy?" He nodded once. "You are the promise of the rain." She wanted to laugh, to call it madness, but the truth was, something in her heart ached to believe it. That night, she couldn't sleep. The fire's glow danced on the cave walls, and Tarak lay a few feet away, eyes closed, chest rising and falling steadily. Evelyn stared at the ceiling, her mind a storm of questions. What if he was wrong? What if she truly was barren and his vision meant nothing? And yet, what if he was right? By morning, the rain had stopped completely. The air was clean, heavy with the scent of wet earth. Tarak led her outside, and Evelyn gasped. The canyon that had once been colorless was now painted with green. Tiny wildflowers dotted the slopes. Water pooled at her feet, shimmering like glass. "The land remembers," Tarak said quietly. "Just as you will." They walked until the sun set, the world glowing with new life. Tarak gathered herbs and roots as they went, teaching her how to heal wounds, how to listen to the silence between heartbeats. Evelyn found herself drawn to his calm, his quiet strength. But that night, as the stars came out, something else stirred inside her, a warmth, a flutter deep within her belly. She pressed a hand to it without thinking. "What's wrong?" Tarak asked from across the fire. She shook her head, uncertain. "Nothing. I just felt something strange." He watched her closely, the flicker of the flames catching in his dark eyes. "The storm does not pass without leaving a mark," he said. Evelyn looked down at her hand, still pressed to her stomach. The world felt different now, alive, breathing, watching her. For the first time, she wondered if Tarak's words had not been prophecy, but truth waiting to bloom. Days turned into weeks, and the canyon that once felt like a prison began to feel like something else entirely, a place between 2 worlds. Evelyn no longer woke with fear in her chest. Instead, each morning, she found herself waiting to hear Tarak's voice echo softly against the rocks, or the low hum of his songs carried by the wind. Tarak was unlike any man she had known. He spoke little, but every word was measured, as though silence itself was his companion. He treated her not as a possession, but as something sacred, something the world had wounded and left to heal on its own. Evelyn helped him gather roots and herbs from the slopes after the rains. He showed her which plants cured pain, which soothed fever, which kept away the spirits that haunted dreams. At night, they cooked together over the fire, the scent of roasted corn and wild herbs filling the air. Slowly, her laughter began to return, soft at first, then fuller, freer. One evening, while the sun was bleeding into the horizon, Tarak handed her a small carved figure made of stone. It was shaped like a woman kneeling, hands on her belly. Evelyn turned it over in her hands. "What is this?" she asked. "It is called Nanahi," Tarak said. "She carries the spirit of new beginnings. My mother carved one for every woman who brought life into our tribe." Her smile faded. "But I can't." She hesitated. The word bear stuck in her throat like dust. Tarak stepped closer. "The earth does not ask permission to bloom," he said. "It simply waits for the rain." She looked at him then, not just as a man who had freed her, but as someone who believed in something greater than pain. Something she had lost long ago. That night, Evelyn woke to a strange warmth in her chest and a pulse low in her belly. It was faint but alive. She pressed her hand to her stomach, thinking it must be the wind or the ache of exhaustion, but it wasn't. It was something deeper, something that felt new. When morning came, Tarak was already outside, standing on a ridge, watching the sky. The wind carried the scent of wildflowers that had bloomed overnight. Evelyn joined him quietly. "You feel it now," he said without turning. Her breath caught. "Feel what?" He glanced at her, the faintest smile in his eyes. "The change." She wanted to deny it, to laugh at him for his strange beliefs, but she couldn't. Something had changed. Her body felt lighter, her spirit calmer. Even the air seemed to hum differently around her. That day, Tarak took her beyond the canyon to a wide plain where the horizon stretched endlessly. Herds of wild horses grazed in the distance. The sky was a deep, endless blue, and the wind whispered through the tall grass. "This is where my people once lived," Tarak said quietly. "Before the soldiers came, before the land was taken. Here, the women danced to call life into the world. Here, they sang to the unborn." Evelyn listened, her heart heavy and full all at once. "And you believe that song still works?" He nodded. "The spirit never forgets the sound of creation." He looked at her then, really looked, and she felt her breath catch. For a moment, the world seemed to hold still. The space between them was heavy with something unspoken, something neither dared name. As the sun sank low, Tarak began to hum a deep rhythmic sound that seemed to rise from the ground itself. Evelyn closed her eyes. The sound wrapped around her like a heartbeat, ancient and steady. When the song ended, the wind shifted, and she opened her eyes to find him standing close enough that she could feel the warmth of his breath. "Tarak," she whispered, unsure of what to say. He touched her cheek gently, his thumb tracing the trail of a single tear she hadn't realized had fallen. "Do not fear what the Creator gives," he murmured. That night, under a sky filled with stars, Evelyn lay awake beside the fire, her mind a storm of questions and emotions she could no longer silence. Was it possible that something within her truly lived again? Or was Tarak's prophecy merely reshaping her hope into illusion? As the fire crackled softly, she placed her hand over her stomach once more. And for the first time in her life, she didn't feel empty. She felt waiting. The days grew warmer, and the desert came alive in ways Evelyn had never seen. Tiny blossoms opened across the canyon floor, birds returned to the cliffs, and streams trickled where dry sand once ruled. It was as if the earth itself was celebrating something unseen. Evelyn could feel it too. a pulse beneath her ribs, a rhythm that wasn't her own. It frightened her, but it also filled her with a strange peace. Each morning, she woke before Tarak, stepping barefoot into the sunlight, touching her belly as if to confirm it was real. Tarak noticed the change without asking. His eyes softened when they met hers. He moved around her with a kind of reverence, as though he sensed that something sacred had begun. One evening, as they gathered wild herbs near a shallow stream, Evelyn caught her reflection in the water. Her face looked different, softer, calmer, yet filled with something fierce. "I used to hate my reflection," she murmured. "It reminded me of what I couldn't give." Tarak crouched beside her, washing his hands. "And now?" She glanced at him, the corners of her mouth lifting. "Now it reminds me I'm still here." He nodded. "You are stronger than you think, Evelyn Ward. The storm came for a reason." Later that night, as the wind whispered through the canyon, Evelyn woke to the sound of distant drumming. Faint, rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat echoing through the rocks. She sat up, thinking it might be a dream, but the sound grew clearer. She stepped outside their small shelter. Tarak stood by the fire, eyes closed, hands raised toward the stars. The sound wasn't from drums, it was coming from him. He was humming, low and steady, a sound that seemed to vibrate through the air. "What are you doing?" she whispered. Tarak opened his eyes. "Calling the spirits of the mothers," he said. "They guide those chosen by the Creator to carry new life." Evelyn froze. "Chosen?" He approached slowly, his gaze unwavering. "You feel it now, don't you? The change inside you." Her throat tightened. I don't know what I feel." Tarak reached out, resting his hand lightly over her stomach. His touch was warm, grounding. "You carry what he promised you," he said softly. "The Creator does not lie." Evelyn stepped back, tears filling her eyes. "You can't know that. You don't even know if I can." He cut her off gently. "I know. I see it in your spirit. The rain fell because of you. The land blooms because of you. Life answers life." She wanted to argue, to tell him it was madness, but her body betrayed her. A flutter moved inside her again, stronger this time, unmistakable. She gasped, pressing a hand to her belly. Tarak saw it in her eyes. He smiled, not a man's smile, but one born of reverence. He bowed his head slightly, whispering something in his language she didn't understand. That night, Evelyn couldn't sleep. The stars above seemed to pulse with her heartbeat. She thought of her past of miles, of the years of emptiness, of every cruel word that called her barren. And now, in the stillness of this canyon, she felt the faint rhythm of something living beneath her skin. The next morning, Tarak led her to the highest cliff. From there, the world stretched endlessly, painted in gold and red. "Do you see that line?" he asked, pointing to where the land met the sky. "That is the path between worlds, the seen and the unseen. You now walk both." Evelyn's eyes welled. "Why me, Tarak? Why not one of your own women?" He looked at her for a long time before answering. "Because the Creator chooses those who have known pain. Only the broken soil can drink the deepest rain." The words sank deep into her heart. She turned toward the horizon, tears streaking her face, but her soul feeling lighter than it ever had. For the first time, she didn't curse the years that had wounded her. She thanked them, because without them, she would never have found this place, this peace, or this life stirring inside her. And though she didn't fully understand it, she knew one thing with absolute certainty: Tarak's prophecy was no longer just words. It was becoming real. The sky over Red Mesa darkened like a curtain being drawn across the heavens. The wind carried a scent of rain and war. Evelyn stood beside Tarak, her heart pounding as the horizon trembled with the sound of distant hooves. The Apache warrior stood motionless, his long black hair whipping across his bare shoulders, tribal jewelry gleaming with each flash of lightning. "They're coming," Evelyn whispered, clutching the pouch against her chest, the one that carried her brother's journal and the symbol of peace Tarak had carved. Tarak didn't move. "They will not cross this land without speaking to me first." His deep voice carried the weight of a man who had faced death many times before. "But you must stay behind the rocks, Evelyn. What happens next is not for your eyes." "I've come too far to hide," she said, stepping closer to him. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from the unspoken connection she now felt. "You risked everything for me. I won't run now." Tarak turned to her slowly, his obsidian eyes reflecting both sorrow and pride. "You have the heart of a warrior," he murmured. "But this storm, this fight is mine." Thunder rumbled like drums of the earth. Moments later, a group of riders appeared through the dust and rain. Their torches flickered in the wind, and at their lead rode Colonel Briggs, the man who had ordered the massacre years ago that had destroyed Tarak's family. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat. "That's him," she said, her voice breaking. "The man who—" "I know," Tarak interrupted, his voice steady. "I have waited for this night." When the riders halted, the colonel's voice rang out, harsh and commanding. "Apache!" He shouted. "Step forward. You've been a ghost for too long. It's time this ends." Rain began to fall, soaking through the desert dust. Tarak stepped forward into the open, every muscle in his body coiled with restrained fury. His tattoos glistened beneath the rain, symbols of his ancestors glowing faintly as lightning split the sky. Colonel Briggs dismounted, his pistol drawn. "You think this land still belongs to your kind? You're wrong. The world's moving on without you." Tarak didn't reply. Instead, he raised his spear and struck the ground once. The sound echoed like thunder. "This land remembers every drop of blood spilled upon it," he said. "And it remembers you, Briggs." Evelyn could see the tension between them, two worlds colliding under a storm that seemed born for this moment. Briggs sneered. "You think one savage can stand against men with guns?" Tarak took a slow step closer. "A man who fears death already belongs to it," he said quietly. The colonel hesitated, unnerved by the calm in Tarak's tone. The rain poured harder now, soaking both men, the storm mirroring the rage and grief that had waited years for release. Suddenly, one of the soldiers raised his rifle and fired. The shot missed Tarak by inches, striking a rock behind him. In the chaos that followed, Tarak moved like lightning, grabbing his spear and throwing it with deadly precision. It struck the rifle from the soldier's hands, snapping it in two. Evelyn gasped, covering her mouth as Tarak stood tall, defiant. "No more blood," he said, voice booming over the storm. "This ends with truth, or all will burn." Colonel Briggs lowered his gun, eyes narrowing. "Truth?" he mocked. "The truth is you're a ghost clinging to ashes." Tarak's eyes flicked to Evelyn for a moment. "And yet, even ashes can bloom when rain falls." For the first time, the colonel faltered. The woman behind Tarak, the one he thought was just another settler, stepped forward, holding the pouch high. "This," Evelyn shouted, "is proof that the land was never yours to take. My brother died trying to bring peace. This was his treaty, his final plea." The soldiers exchanged uneasy glances. Tarak stood silent, letting her words ripple through the storm. Lightning split the sky once more, illuminating them all, the warrior, the woman, and the past they refused to bury. The truth had finally come into the open. But before the moment could settle, the thunder rolled again, closer this time, deeper. The storm had only begun. The storm had raged all night. Now in the gray light of dawn, the mesa was quiet, too quiet. Smoke curled from smoldering torches, and the scent of rain mixed with gunpowder hung in the air. Evelyn stood beside Tarak, her clothes torn, her face streaked with dirt and tears. Around them, the desert stretched out in solemn silence as if holding its breath after what had been done. Colonel Briggs and his men had fallen back, retreating into the valley after the truth of Evelyn's words had shaken their resolve. The treaty she carried, signed by her late brother and the Apache elders, had proved that this land was sacred, promised long before settlers claimed it. Yet, the victory came at a heavy price. Tarak stood motionless, his spear driven into the ground beside him. His broad chest rose and fell slowly, the storm's fury now reflected only in his eyes. The thunder had ceased, but something deeper still echoed between them, an unspoken bond forged through fire and pain. "You did it," Evelyn whispered, her voice trembling. "You faced them. You protected what's yours." Tarak turned to her, rainwater still dripping from his long black hair. "No," he said quietly. "We protected it, together." He looked toward the horizon, where the first light of dawn was beginning to break through the retreating clouds. The red hue spilled across the desert like blood turning into hope. Evelyn clutched the pouch closer to her chest. "What happens now?" she asked. "They'll come back. Men like Briggs don't forget humiliation." Tarak stepped closer, his presence grounding her in the moment. "Then they will find nothing left to take," he said, "because they cannot take what is already reborn." Evelyn frowned, trying to understand. "Reborn?" Tarak's dark eyes softened as he studied her face. "When I first saw you," he began, "I saw sorrow wounds not made by war but by betrayal. Your husband sold you as something broken. But you were never broken, Evelyn. You were only waiting for your spirit to be awakened." Her throat tightened. "And you think you were the one to awaken it?" she said, a hint of tears in her eyes. Tarak's lips curved in the faintest smile. "No," he replied. "The land did. It called you here. The storm, the fight, the blood, all of it brought you back to what was always inside you." A long silence settled between them. The wind carried the distant cries of hawks soaring above, circling the rising sun. Evelyn took a slow breath and stepped closer until she stood just before him. "You told me once," she said softly, "that by 9 months I would bear your people's hope." Her hand brushed against his chest. "What did you mean?" Tarak reached out, his fingers grazing her cheek. "Not just a child of blood," he said. "A child of peace. A new beginning born from two worlds that once hated each other. You came to me as one lost, and the spirits chose to give you purpose again." Her eyes shimmered. "You mean—" "Yes," Tarak whispered, his voice deep and steady. "The spirits have spoken. The seed of life has been given. It grows within you now." Evelyn gasped softly, her hand instinctively moving to her belly. "Tarak, how can you know?" He placed his palm over her hand, warmth radiating through her trembling fingers. "Because I feel it," he said. "The land feels it. The storm did not come to destroy, it came to bless." For a moment neither spoke. Only the wind and the rising sun bore witness to what passed between them, something sacred, something ancient. Then, far below the mesa, the Apache tribe began to emerge from the canyons. Men, women, and elders gathered, their faces turned upward toward Tarak and Evelyn. The sight filled her with awe. The same people who had once regarded her as an outsider now waited for her with reverence. Tarak turned to her once more. "They will accept you now," he said. "Not as a prisoner, not as a stranger, but as one of us." Evelyn felt tears spill down her cheeks. "And you?" she whispered. "What will you do?" He smiled faintly, brushing a strand of wet hair from her face. "I will stand beside you when the sun rises again. For the child that comes will carry both our worlds." She reached for him then, her fingers resting over his heart. "Then I'll stay," she said, her voice firm. Not because I must, but because this everything we've survived means something greater. As the sun broke fully over the mesa, golden light bathed them both. Tarak lifted his gaze toward the sky and whispered in Apache, Nana di shiu, Adi du w nihi ba ahi. Evelyn looked up at him questioningly. What does it mean? He smiled. It means, Mother, the spirits have given us a new dawn. And there, on the sacred mesa of red stone, with thunderclouds drifting away and the promise of peace glowing in the east, Evelyn and Tarak stood as the living bridge between two worlds, proof that even from betrayal and pain, life and hope could rise again.